Mac, let's get into what happened in week 7. Let's start with Clemson, number 10, Clemson, which remained at number 10 in the current AP poll. They beat Wake Forest 49-14. They indeed cover. Clemson is back to covering, which means Clemson is back to looking very, very good. This was just dominant. I mean, Wake did go up 7-0. That was interesting. But after that point, especially with the Wake turnovers that Clemson turned into points, you can't turn the ball over against Clemson if you're Wake Forest. Things that stood out to me, Mac, this offense absolutely humming, even without Bryant Wesco and Tyler Brown, which is very interesting. Phil Mafa just continues to be a monster. Brenningstool, 7 catches for 104 yards and a touchdown. Great game by him. Clemson had 0 turnovers. I'm going to throw out these turnover stats, and then I want all your thoughts, Mac. So Clemson had 0 turnovers against Wake Forest. They have 3 turnovers all season. So they have played 6 games, and they have 3 turnovers. Last year, through 6 games, Clemson had 10 turnovers. Clemson had 3 turnovers in the first game alone last season against Duke. And Clemson finished the season last year with 22 total turnovers. And again, this year, halfway through the year, they only have 3. Massive difference maker.
It really is. It's a big, massive, just everything. You're giving the ball away. You're not scoring points. They're not doing that this year. They absolutely aren't. They're taking care of that football, and it is a big difference maker. And I mean, you remember how Coach Schwaney was so adamant about it. It's like, this is just crazy. This is not who we are. It's not what we do.
Oh, I remember.
It was such a random thing and how it would happen. But, yeah, looking at this game, the interesting thing for me, you mentioned Wake Forest going up 7-0. I don't know if I had it on my bingo card that Clemson would play number 1 Georgia and 2-4 Wake Forest. And in fact, Wake Forest would be the first ever team to score on Clemson in the first quarter. I did not have that on the bingo card there, but they did it. They found a way, had a couple of chunky plays. I think it was like a 30, 40-yard pass, and then a really nice touchdown. It was sweet. It was a really nice catch by Horatio Fields there. To come up with points. But overall, looking at Clemson, everything is started and finished with Cade Klubnik. I mean, how different he is. And what's actually funny about this, as I kind of bring that up and say that, there's a lot of different ways that we can go. But, I kind of said something, and then EJ was like, well, actually, don't forget about this. And then Eddie said, well, guys, what are you talking about? It's actually the receivers. And the coach said, well, what about Phil Mafa? And I said, oh, so you guys are telling me Clemson's really freaking good. Like that's what we're looking at, with the body types, with the personnel, with, just what they're able to do. But, kind of going back to Cade, the ownership of the offense that we continue to see, that touchdown to, Antonio Williams, I can't remember when it was early. He checked to that. He audible to that. Yet again, that's like the third one that we've kind of seen there where he sees something. He goes to his guy who's been the most dynamic player, skill player for this team outside of a quarterback, and dials it up and throws an absolute strike. And so his accuracy, the yardage, touchdowns, again, as you kind of mentioned, no turnovers. It's been really, really fun to watch. And then you add that in with Clemson back-to-back weeks rushing for over 200 yards, had 230 yards here. Phil Mafa is just special. And it was weird early. We're kind of watching, and he wasn't – I don't know. A lot of guys were slipping too. That turf just kind of felt weird. It felt like Phil couldn't get his footing. And then once he did, he's going, 19 for 108 and a couple of touchdowns, running guys over. I mean, just – the Phil Mafa show has been bouncing dudes' helmets off of turf the last couple of weeks. It's been really fun to see that physicality and that attitude that he's running with.
He is. And I thought even early, before he had really broken one, he still gets you 4 or 5 yards. Like it's very few dead plays or very few negative plays at all from Phil Mafa. Yeah. I mean, he is going to go forward, and then eventually he's going to break one. Like he's proven that pretty much every game, not really Georgia, but pretty much every game. He wears people down, and he is slowly becoming one of my favorite Clemson running backs to watch. Like of all of the great ones that Clemson has had under Dabo Swinney, he's just fun to watch. And he runs. It's like he's a powerful runner, but he's so smooth. And that is kind of a unique combination.
Really versatile. He's just really versatile. I mean, his vision, his patience, and as you mentioned, his power, and yet still has breakaway speed. He's running away from guys at 230. And he's an excellent receiver. I mean, the amount of targets, the amount of, how they kind of are using him, it's more like traditionally what you see from a running back. It's not like he's flexing out running, receiver type routes, but it's really impressive. And I just love, what we've seen, from Garrett Riley and the play calling that we have had. Other guys stepping up. It was nice to see Troy Stellato get into the end zone. Has just felt like a guy that has had really bad injury luck. Had a pass earlier in the game where he was wide open, maybe scores, who knows? And Cade overthrew him a little bit, and you're just like, God, this guy just can't catch a break. But he found the end zone, which was awesome. He was the second leading receiver, had 6 catches there. So it's just it's cool. It's cool to see these guys and a group that KG, I've been hammering that there's guys here, there's guys at this receiver position. They just haven't been healthy. They haven't been on the field. Well, now they all are, and they're all ready to go. And it's been awesome to see that, and awesome to see them step up.
I want to add this because I was saying this to you, that I was a little like, I don't know. I feel like the September and into October part of Clemson's schedule has been a little bit of a Debbie Downer. Like you've played
Sure.
Georgia, Florida State, nowhere near as good. Even App, like nowhere near as good. NC State, like all of these programs that you thought would give you good games have just fallen off. And then you've played these with Stanford, Wake, etc. And you have Virginia, which my Who's. We're gonna get to that. I have some words. I have some things to say about my Who's. We're gonna get there. But I'm gonna add this, Mac. November for Clemson. You have 5 games in November, by the way. That's unique. This is shaping up to be a very interesting November. So I think just kind of patience if you're a Clemson fan, seeing all these other programs kind of play bigger games and wanting to play a bigger game. At least that's what I've been feeling. In November, you have Louisville, which we'll see if they're back and ranked. We're going to talk about their win over Virginia, but still a good team at home. At Virginia Tech, I know Virginia Tech's down. They're still going to make a bowl, and it's still at Virginia Tech. I mean, that environment is going to be amazing. Pitt, at Pitt, top 20 Pitt. I mean, no one would have seen that coming. Citadel. And then you have South Carolina at home. If South Carolina could just win one of these bigger games that they're so close,
Their
that game
defense is
could
weak.
be, it could be actually decently interesting. So I'm just saying, I think we're going to get there. I think November is going to be a lot more, for lack of a better term, interesting for Clemson.
Some say November to remember, and I think that's what we're going to get. And the good thing about it, this team's ascending, right? They're getting better and better. And I thought the Wake Forest game was their best, complete game. There were still some things early, but the way they finished, we hadn't seen Clemson finish, right? We haven't seen them finish, really all year in regards to a second half. Shut them out. It looked extremely good. The defense, again, it's so weird to me, KG, because it's one of those things. I'm not a defensive player, so I can't look at it in the same light where I can watch an offensive play happen and I can tell you pretty close to what should or should not have happened. Defense, I've got no clue. I mean, I know what looks bad. I know when guys look like they're missing assignments or a blown coverage or, things that just look different to a relatively trained eye. But, I mean, I don't know calls. I don't know schemes like those guys do, that defenders and, things of that nature. So even when I watch it, it is relatively like another language. And, you do get frustrated at times because you're just thinking, okay, these body types that are here, what these guys are doing, who they should be. I just expected so much more from them. And they had a great game. They had nearly double-digit tackles for loss. They had the most sacks that we've seen, I believe, in a year or a game so far. And had multiple picks, like right place, right time, and doing their thing. But there was just a couple of plays here and there where, the defensive line wasn't getting any type of push, and they were just kind of sitting. And, I remember it was probably after the second touchdown, seeing Nick Easton on the sideline just going ballistic, like just furious at these guys saying, what's happening? What are y'all doing? And we even heard, from the sideline reporter, kind of questioning, who did you think these guys were? Like, what did you think was going to happen? And, after that, it kind of turned up and things of that nature. But, it's just things like that where it's just always seems to be kind of something. And again, not that it's been detrimental in any shape or form quite yet outside of, that first game. But a unit that feels like they're starting to figure it out maybe a little bit. We'll see. things will tell because, again, as you mentioned, some of those offenses this week, you got offense that's wide open. You got Pittsburgh. You have Kyron Drones, super mobile quarterback. We saw what they look like against Miami at their peak. Louisville, a really confident offense. And then South Carolina, a great running quarterback, but ultimately not a very good, consistent, good offense. So they've got time to figure it out, but it just feels like that's kind of a unit that is, I don't want to say quite behind, but they are. I thought they were going to be best in the country. They're quite behind where I thought they would be at this point.
I think that's fair. I think that when you look at the numbers, especially when you look at points per game allowed, it's not bad. Like this defense has been a little bit of a bend don't break kind of situation, right?
Right.
And I think the offense has looked so good over the last couple of weeks. Then you look at the defense and maybe it's a little bit of an unfair comparison, but it just feels like maybe this D line doesn't have the depth that some D lines in the past have had and the firepower, if you will.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Peter Woods has been hurt. He's been back for the last couple of games, and he's obviously a difference maker. So we'll see. I think this defense, like you said,
he looked great.
a little slower out of the gate, but
Mhm.
maybe they can. I mean, they're still not really giving up many points, except for to Georgia. But we'll see how that looks. Any thoughts on Wake before we head on to our next game?
No. It's a uphill battle. It's hard. It's hard going against a team like
Jamon
that.
Claiborne did what he could.
Yeah, did what he could. And again, Hank had some, fun passes where I was like, whoo, that looks good. I saw somebody on Twitter talking about, oh, so he's not vintage Tom Brady all of a sudden. That's good because he was there for a couple of plays, couple of series where he was slinging it around. But yeah, it's always tough, going against Clemson for sure.
And you don't have a guy like Sam Hartman.